friend. You want us to get along.
Today I was at the gym. I always have such gym stories. But this isn't, don't worry, this is not a scandalous gym story. But I was leaving and I had to get my thing stamped, and the guy was working there, he had a name tag on, and his name was Kenny. And I was like, oh, Kenny, but he spells it with an I-E. So he's like, oh, thank you, Kenny, with an I-E. And he said, yeah, I'm just trying to be different. And I was like, whoa, you don't have to try. You already are different. And the thing is, well, that's true. And then that circles back to this challenge that we have as actors specifically, but as human beings totally, which is the three stories I'm going to tell you here that comes back to that in a way, is, listen, you guys, I get it at one level, and this is something we talked about last night, is that we inherently distrust that we are unique and different enough that there is a space for you. And I get it. We live in a society that's comparative and disparative by nature. We compare and despair. And so, you know, if we change ourselves, then we're more marketable or more sexy or more popular or more castable or more dynamic or all those mores. But it's not the truth. And I find that, you know, a lot of what I've been experiencing in life lately is it keeps coming back to very simple precepts are really the governing principles of the world that we're living in. And I think, you know, what we talked about last night a little bit is the simplicity of being, which is not simple at all. And so then I had a couple examples of this in my own life. And one thing, I was listening to Shefali Sabari. I don't know if you know her. She's a child... well, she's a parenting expert, and she was on Oprah's Life Class, and I just randomly turned it on. I was so blown away by the way this woman spoke to parents about how to parent children. Now, I'm not a parent, so I can't speak to that, but I can speak to what she was talking about, which is the thrust was, again, if we really start to honor who kids are, then they don't have to, I mean, it's so fascinating to me that they don't have to go on the journey of trying to be somebody else, which is so much of what she was talking about, which is conscious parenting, which is presence, which is stop manipulating from a parental point of view. Stop exercising your agenda. Stop, see how these are connected to acting. Stop trying to control things. Stop trying to make something other than it is. Why don't you just allow, celebrate instead? And I tweeted her just saying, like, wow, it's like so much of my work is getting people to come back to being the child that we all are, that somewhere along the path adults have beaten out of us. And that's basically, if we start from the premise of getting children to honor who they are, not trying to affix our agenda on who we want them to become, they're already moving forward in the right way. And talk about listening to those kids talk, they already got it. So that was one thing about the simplicity of being and not having to try to be somebody we aren't. And then Becca sent me this, but I had also listened to it last week when I left class here on NPR. There's a guy named Shaka Senghor who did a TED Talk, and he was incarcerated at the age of 19 for murdering someone, and he's out now, obviously, and his story about, I don't remember how long, 19 years? I don't remember how many years he was in prison, for a long time. But one of the principles that I thought was so mind-blowing to me that he talked about is we have to give ourselves permissions to expand and grow and evolve as human beings. That's our nature. And living in a prison culture in which he was a part of for many years doesn't really honor that. And yet, again, that's in our DNA. And that also comes back to honoring, oh my gosh, our own hardwiring is wanting to transform. And I thought that, well, a lot of that has to do with forgiveness. And it's not, these things again are so simple. Your life begins to change applying these things, but that's not always easy to do. And then the third thing that I thought was really interesting, partly because I was talking to Captain Greg on my flight back from New York, and then I read this article in Vanity Fair that's coming out. It was a huge article about what happened on that Air France flight that crashed 5 years ago. It was a really compelling story. And that story also corroborated a lot of what this captain was telling me. And you know, part of why that catastrophe occurred, it's nobody's fault, but because pilots are often not trained to communicate. And so when they're in a stressful situation, see, these principles are all about when the ego gets in, it can lead to disastrous results. So instead of working from this a supposition of asking for help, or I don't know, or can you assist me, instead of being the person in charge, then you can move from no possibility to possibility. Now that is a catastrophic example, but it's also the training that they are actually doing with pilots now, where you may be the person in charge, but that does not mean you are above receiving from other people. So that's about connection, that's about presence, that's not about operating an agenda, that's not saying your way or the highway, but that's what we do in life. That's what we do as actors. Your point of power is just in the opposite, it's just in allowance. And so I just want to end with this, because it brings, to me, it's all about coming back to the same conclusions that were taught 2,500 years ago. It's Shoshin, which is a Japanese term for beginner's mind. Can we do that all the time? It's not easy. You get spurned by love. You get rejected by an agent. You go out and you are denied things. And so this happens, and then you have a preconceived idea for the next time you want to love, or the next time you want to audition, or the next time you want to have something happen. So what happens is you're closed off from the possibility of it being a new experience. I get it. That's part of the challenge of staying open to life. But Shoshin means a beginner's mind is approaching all things from a beginner. Isn't that beautiful? A beginner's mind means, again, you're not exercising an agenda. You're not manipulating. You're not controlling. You don't have the answers. Instead, you're open to what? Eagerness, play, curiosity, adventure, love. These are precepts that have been around forever. And when I find new thought leaders, but they're not, that's a weird word to use. Old thought leaders that are now new, because the Buddha talked about it. Great saints talked about it 2,000 years ago, but now they're in the forefront of, I think, radical transformations in our life. Holy crap. They're showing us a way to live in the world so we are not experiencing so much of self-inflicted pain. You can do it.
If you wanna be my friend, you want us to get along, please do not expect me to wrap it up and keep it there. The observation I'm doing could easily be understood.